It's Tuesday, August 30th, 2016. It's time for WorthPoint Chats with Harry Rinker. I'm Greg Watkins, the editor at WorthPoint.com. And Harry, how are we doing tonight?
Well, I've had a very interesting week, Greg. Thursday, 2 weeks ago, my last surviving uncle died in my mother's family. My mother was from a family of 10. And it's kind of odd to feel all of a sudden that like I'm now the last generation out there, with younger cousins and their children and grandchildren and so forth. But it's been very interesting because I came from a big nucleated family. I had 28 aunts and uncles and 29 first cousins, and 23 were on this side of the family. So I drove in from Michigan for the funeral in one of those hectic overnight drives where I drove in Saturday, went to the funeral on Sunday, and drove back Sunday night with my wife. We got in at 4 o'clock in the morning, only to turn around that Monday evening that we got back to have a cousin call me and tell me her 49-year-old son died. But anyway, when I was in for the funeral, the family said, no, we don't have a list of all the surviving members of the family. Harry, why don't you do that? Said they.
Well, because the thing one that they turn to.
Well, first of all, I am the keeper of the family records. Over the years, as so often happens, none of my cousins wanted stuff, including their own family stuff. And so I wound up with, I've got 6 of my 8 family Bibles from the major bloodlines that I have, and tons of photographs. In fact, when my one cousin he didn't like his father. When he was cleaning out his father's stuff, he threw all the family photos in the trash can. Well, of course, I retrieved them. And so now all of a sudden the grandchildren do want them back again. But, this whole thing about knowing where heirs are and family stories, it's been an adventure for me. We'd lost actually two lines of cousins, but I got them all back. And I, in fact, just before we went on the air tonight, I finished it, and I'm going to be sending out the first of the contact list in another week or two, the big descendants genealogy I've done. But it's taken a lot of work. But the fun thing is that I had all these unidentified photographs. I'm going to get around to having a point for saying this. I had all these unidentified photographs in my files of weddings and so forth. Well, now I had the dates of all the weddings and who they married and who the people that were there. So now I can probably identify a good 20% of the photographs that are in my files that I don't have identification on it, except roughly, well, I think it's somebody's wedding kind of thing. So I'm excited about that. And this whole matter of keeping family records, you think it's all available on the net. Let me tell you, it's not. I probably got 2/3 of all my information by calling up relatives and having them give it to me over the phone. I don't know how truthful they've been about it, especially when you ask them the year they were born. They may have shaved off a few.
Right.
Well, no, that's a big issue when you're out there doing genealogy. My great-grandmother, Rinker, managed to shave off a couple of years when she got buried. So she didn't seem so old. I don't know why she cared then, but she took a couple of years off. The tombstone records don't agree with the birth certificates I have in the family, but it's all a load of fun doing that. By the way, I've been under some pressure from Amy to do my favorite finds, and we've talked a little bit about that. But we're going to talk about my favorite finds by talking about some antique shops. What would you tell you if I found a number of Rinker things in antique shops that related to my family?
I would believe it. I would believe it. And
I know over the years, I've acquired at least a half a dozen items that are Rinker family related. Now, only a few of them are my direct line, but some of them are my secondary and third. But I found 2 birth and baptismal certificates, one for a brother of, I think, my great-great-grandfather, another one for the sister of my great-grandmother. I found a Rinker coverlet from a line that went out of the Virginia Rinkers, not my immediate line. Found a Pennsylvania German show towel that's somehow Rinker related. But the most important thing is a friend of mine, Don Yoder, one of the great scholars on Pennsylvania German stuff, came to me one day and said, "Here's an old deed signed by Heinrich Rinker." That's my great-great-great-great-grandfather that fought in the Revolution. He just gave it to me.
Wow.
Now, see, favorite finds don't have to be favorite bargains. They can just be good stuff.
That's true. Well, you know, we recently posted an article on WorthPoint about a man who found a treasure trove of photographs and documents related to his great-grandfather or grandfather. And it was a portion of the family archives that one uncle just lost track of, and it ended up in the world.
Well,
and he found it on eBay, and he bought it and got it back, and was able to fill in a lot of those holes that they weren't sure what was going on in the family.
You know, this is the thing. We want to talk about antique shops. You know, antique shops are. Oh, there it is. Right. Oh, okay. There you are. Look at that. Isn't that nice? Right.
Yes.
And that's great. Now, there's a missing Rinker family Bible that was around in the 70s, but I lost track of it, and I'd sure love to find it. But let's talk about what's going on in local antique shops in a moment. There recently was a story about an antique shop. You know, antique shops are pretty much in a death knell. I mean, back in the 1950s and 60s, what you did is you got in your car and you literally went antiquing, especially in New England along the East Coast, where you went from antique shop to antique shop. And then with the arrival of the antique malls and the big shows, the antique shops fell in hard time. And when Linda and I lived up in Connecticut from 2006 to 2010, we watched the old antiquing roads go by the board. The antique shops closed one right after another. But that was because they weren't offering the kind of merchandise people were looking for. But now there's a kind of revival. Antique shops are coming back. And you found an interesting story about an antique shop that combined, I think, was it a restaurant or a bakery here?
Yeah, it's like a sweet shop that did a lot of business while the antique store across the way was open. They just decided, let's combine businesses.
And I think that's what we're going to have to do more and more and more in the antique trade. Now, there was, you know, that trend went on with antique malls in the 1990s. A lot of antique malls put in restaurants and so forth, and I'm assuming some of them still have them, but that was a way of attracting customers. This is a much more fun one because I think what happens is that here you have them in an actual mall itself, right?
Yes.
And so you have it in the mall environment. And we have to accept the fact that young people today, if they're going to go out and they're going to buy antiques and collectibles, they're going to buy them for decorative purposes. They're going to buy them on the spur of the moment. And this is just a fun way to do it. I mean, you know, it's like everything on the wall is for sale. I get frustrated sometimes when I go into Cracker Barrel, you know, and TGIF Fridays or whatever it is. You know, they went around and they decorated a lot of those malls with antiques and collectibles, a lot of, unfortunately, reproductions as well. But I often go in there and say, I'd like to own that. But you can't go to the guy and say, hey, how much you want to sell that off the wall for? You know, they won't sell them. But here, right, if it's on the wall, they'll sell it.
Hey, yeah, everything's for sale at this place.
Everything is for sale. Do I think we're going to see a revival of the antique shop? Only if it's in this kind of a venue, as far as I can see. I think the days of the antique shop the antique shop is the big thing that suffered from eBay. Well, that's not true. The antique shop actually suffered from the antique mall and the decline of the shows. What eBay did is it put an end to the classified ads in the trade papers. But, you know, it was a lot of fun. Now, I actually I had a chance to break up a huge estate where the woman antiqued in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And I found an archive box full of her antiquing notes, what she went out and what she bought. And we sent the entire house load of stuff to Sotheby's, and what Sotheby's didn't want, we sent to Dawson's. Now it's Dawson's Nye over in New Jersey. And I have slides of all the things that got sold, and I'm matching them up now to her shopping notes. So at some point, I'm going to have a wonderful article or series of articles on that, and eventually I'll donate the whole collection to Winterthur.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, most people don't keep diaries. They don't keep records of their antiquing adventures anymore. To find a hoard like that is like an important resource to understand what life was like when you actually did get in the car.
That's right. And if anybody's keeping notes now, it's on a computer, possibly. And as people upgrade their computers, they don't necessarily transfer all their notes along. So it could be on a computer used 2 or 3 times before.
Well, and
good luck in finding that information.
Actually, it's funny you should mention that, because I am extremely concerned about the electronic survival of my writings. I take them off and I put them on hard disks and so forth. But maybe I'll put them up in the cloud eventually. But the point of the matter is that if my hard drive goes out, and I'm sensitive enough to this, I've got backup running every day. But I mean, it makes me very nervous. I'm waiting for the Ruskies or somebody to attack us and electronically, or the Chinese or whoever's going to do it.
That's right, because the way to take down America is to take down the antique trade.
I actually figure the day after the election we're going to get hit, but who knows? But anyway, enough of all that. We got some interesting objects in.
We do. Yes.
Which one are we going to first? Pick one.
Before we do that, let's get some more items here if we can. So.
All right. What are we talking about here?
We're talking about how to get your item onto this chat.
Do people actually send us emails to community@worthpoint.com? Wouldn't that be great, right?
They really do. Yes, we do get
some. Yep. And
emails, and we will, if there's enough information and the photos are big enough and clear, not fuzzy, we'll use them.
Yeah, but you know what else we would love to have people do too is write us with questions they'd like us to talk about on the air.
That's right.
We pick the topics every week, and I don't think we pick badly. But the thing about it is, we'd like to be responsive to what the viewers of WorthPoint Chats with Harry Rinker are concerned about. So, if you'd like us to talk about it, trust me, there is not a topic in this field I don't have an opinion about. No, well, there isn't, and I'm not saying my opinion's right, but I'm perfectly willing to tell you what it is. No, we really do we'd love to get some objects that you'd like us to talk about. Please be as descriptive as possible. Size, markings. 3-4 pictures are the biggest help of all. One picture sometimes is a bit troublesome. If you can get details of the object and the mark, that's very, very helpful.
Okay. Well, let's get on to our first item then.
Ah, yes, a shaving mug. Now, I have to tell you, there are clues just looking at the shaving mug about its history. And I figured them out beforehand. Now, this is a shaving mug that was sent to us by someone out in Montana. And they were saying it had been in their family for several generations, and they don't know anything about it. And they were a little concerned that it was a Nazi-related mug because of that swastika sign on there. But you can also see that it's a good luck mug with the horseshoe and the thing. And he asked, the owner asked, what can we tell him about it? Well, one look at the gold painting on the rim and the base and the handle says one quick thing: China painting school stuff. Now, back at the beginning of the 20th century, ladies of means did not work. And so they often took to painting China blanks. They would go to art class to learn how to do this. There was also mail-in courses to teach you how to do this, but usually there was some guy that came. Actually, he was usually a pretty handsome, young-looking guy that after about the 4th or 5th class, the husbands ran him out of town. But anyway, they put a lot of gold highlights on stuff. And the way this worked is there were companies that sold the blanks. They did not make the blanks. They would come over with white blanks, in this case, a white shaving mug blank, and then the person would decorate it. Now, sometimes professional decorators did it as well. But this is a kind of what considered more of a generic shaving mug in the sense that it doesn't have a person's name in it, and it doesn't have an occupation design on it. Those are the really expensive ones. But here's the good news. The person that sent this in also sent us a picture of the bottom of it, which we're going to take a look at right now. And bam, there it is. You can see that the blank came from Limoges, France. Now, this is one of those things where, there was a time in the trade, if you heard the word Limoges, everybody thought you were looking at something expensive, but there were dozens of factories in Limoges. And trust me, this is not Haviland. This is one of the mass production factories that produce blanks of all kinds. and it was painted by Dixie C. Now, it would be, it's great. What's really great with these is when you get their full name, Dixie C. Watt. You know, what is their full name, and they date it. Oftentimes, painted china that was given away as Christmas gifts was often signed and dated on that. But here's the thing: if this shaving mug came from out in that neck of the woods, then he could do some homework and maybe find out who painted it. That would add a little extra value. Now, if you look at the so-called swastika sign, it's what is called the reverse swastika. And that is, it's not the National Socialist swastika. The points go the other way. And this is actually an ancient good luck symbol that traces all the way back to the Mesopotamians and Egyptians and the Greeks, all the way over into the American Indians, as a matter of fact, used this symbol in their pottery and in some of their things. So this is just a generic good luck shaving mug. Now you think with all that stuff I just said, it's got to be worth a lot of money, right? Yeah, $25-$45.
Yeah.
And that's it. Because what happens is that these things were in a huge craze in the 70s and 80s. And then the generic stuff, the stuff with floral designs on it or just a name on it, went by the wayside. Today, if in shavings mugs, all the value is in the so-called occupational mugs. If you're a butcher and it shows a butchery scene on it. I actually, in my canal collection, have one that shows a canal boat. Must have belonged to a canal boat captain. And those are rare. Those are very rare.
I would imagine so, yeah.
Well, I'll wash my mouth out with soap because I never use. They're very
rare. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, yes, I hate the word rare, and there I used it. What a slip of the tongue!
And I didn't catch it either.
There is no rare in our business. There is only scarcity. So there you go. An interesting piece to talk about, I think.
Yeah, well, I like the incorporation of all the good luck.
Yes, I do too. Actually, I mean.
Clovers
my attitude is if a dealer had $50 on it, I don't think that would be unfair because just for the theme of it.
Yeah. So is this a rabbit's foot over here?
Unfortunately, they didn't send the whole thing. But if you look to the left of the horseshoe and the wishbone, doesn't that look like a rabbit's foot in a 4-leaf clover?
I was going to suggest it could be rabbit's foot. Yeah. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Well, no, you have a 5-leaf clover there. I don't know what. I know maybe it's it's an overlapping.
I see several 4-leaf clovers.
Yeah, I mean, so you got a lot of symbolism on that. That's what again, I think you look at this and it takes it beyond the shaving mug value and into the neat thing value. And neat thing always adds a little bit more value as far as I'm concerned.
That's right.
So that's a nice one.
Yeah.
What else have we got to talk about today?
Okay, so another.
No, not another object. We'll just pick another topic. What we're going to talk about here.
Oh, well, we were talking about the rash of thefts across various.
Well, this all got started because you sent me a comment saying, Harry, talk about theft in antique malls and theft in the business, which is a huge problem, by the way.
Well,
from many angles, but we're going to talk more specifically about one type of theft going on at the moment. And
okay.
That is that there apparently is somebody out there putting a hit on sporting museum displays. Here you can see that they hit Roger Maris's museum and stole several important Maris pieces. Maris's Hickok belt, and I forget what the other piece was. And this stuff, yeah, there's the Hickok belt for Professional Athlete of the Year. But Yogi Berra's museum was robbed just a few months ago.
I didn't know that until you told me the other day.
Right, and what happens is that there are collectors who will put out hits on museum collections, and apparently there is some sports memorabilia, baseball memorabilia collector, maybe Yankee memorabilia collector, who has no qualms about buying hot merchandise and hiring people to steal it. Now, the reason I know about this, Greg, when I was the director of the Historical Society of York County in York, Pennsylvania, we were robbed twice. We had displays in the museum, and this was an age before security cameras and a whole bunch of other things. And they actually unscrewed the glass panels that held in front of the displays and stole stuff out of there. About 3-4 years later, I had two experiences. One, we got a call from the police in Lancaster County, and they went down and raided a guy's basement and found stuff stolen from 17 different museums. And they sent us a list and said, does any of this stuff belong to you? And by gosh, it did. But the worst one was, I was at a dinner party in the North Philadelphia suburbs when a guy says to me, oh, Harry, and this was before dinner, so you have to understand the context is, he says, I want to show you this great piece of stoneware that I just bought. So we go into his den area, and he opens the door and he says, there it is in the case in the other room. I said, listen, that was stolen from the Historical Society of York County when I was a curator there. He says, oh, don't tell me that. I bought it from the most reputable dealer in Philadelphia. And I said, look, before we walk over there, I'm going to tell you what it says on the bottom, and I'm going to tell you where there are 2 marks on the bottom. And he said, okay, but I don't believe you. Opens his case, and there it was. And he said, well, I'm sure the guy that sold it to me didn't steal it. Well, I said, I'm probably sure he didn't steal it too, but somebody who sold it to him or somebody who sold it to the guy who sold it to him stole it. And I said, now I'll give you 24 hours to return it before I report you to the police. Now, that's a quick way to say, I think you're not staying for dinner. But,
right.
But it was a very awkward moment. Well, in the end, I did work with him, and I was no longer the director of the Historical Society of York County at the time, but I knew it had been stolen, so I was able to work with him, and we were able to get it back to the museum in a way that was somewhat advantageous to him and the museum too. Theoretically, the museum just going to come and confiscate it because there's no statute of limitations in museum theft. Now, the old days when I was there, and this is one of the things about theft, by the way, the old days, antique malls say, we're not going to report theft. We don't want a reputation that stuff in our mall gets stolen because we'll lose dealers. And museums were like that. We don't want people to know that they're stealing things from here because nobody will donate anything, okay? Well, my board didn't like me, but then they fired me eventually too. But I called the cops immediately because my attitude is the quicker you make it hot, the better off you are. And you know there are now websites for stolen art and stolen things on the internet where you can post them up there. And, you know, if you have something stolen, you're a fool not to report it and get the word out there. Because ultimately, you know, it's going to turn up. I mean, the difficulty so much with theft in our business. Let's suppose you have a McDonald's premium toy, right?
Right.
Well, somebody can steal that and sell it because it looks like a million other examples. How do you protect an antique or collectible? Well, one of the things that you can do is if it's got any defects, photograph it and do it. I'll tell you another story. You know I like to tell stories.
Yes.
I was consulted by a synagogue when there was a group of Torah thefts going on. And they wanted me to praise and tell them how to protect their Torahs. Now, you have to understand, I can't write in the Torah. There's only certain scribes that can write in the Torah, and they won't mark them for me. So I thought about it, and here's the thing. What do you think I found as a way of protecting the Torah? It's printed on sheepskin.
Right, to identify an individual Torah. I would imagine maybe just a photograph of the
photograph some of the sections with defects in the sheepskin.
Right.
You know, that information was passed down, and now that's the principal way to document Torahs, so that if one is stolen, they can identify it.
Yes, that makes perfect sense. I know that for vintage baseball uniforms, like Yogi Berra's game-worn uniform from one of the World Series, they checked where the pinstripes lined up under the arms or in the back.
Yeah.
To match the actual photograph from the game, you know, him jumping into the pitcher's arms. Hey,
you mean the Don Lawson Perfect Game shirt?
Yeah, the one that Berra wore.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that this subject of theft is huge, and we've just scratched the surface. So we'll take part. We'll talk a little bit more about this in a future chat. But meanwhile, we have another object that came in we want to talk about. In fact, a couple of similar objects. I think we've got some I Like Ike buttons, right?
That's right. Let me get it up here.
Yeah, by the way, trying to find back when we had I like buttons, used to go to the county fair and there'd be a fishbowl full of them by the local political party. Now try to buy a Hillary or Trump button, you got to send them $50.
Yeah.
But here is an example of 3/4 inch I like Ike buttons, probably the most common of all the I like Ike buttons that have survived. But if they survive in good condition, they still have some value. Although there's a ton of them out there. I believe you found some records on WorthPoint about that. Yeah, here's a pair that sold for $10.50. It's a lot of money.
That's right.
I mean, they're in very good condition. But then, as you went further on, you found out that it's not like there's any lack of these things, right?
That's right. There are hundreds of I like Ike
buttons of all types.
Buttons, all types, all
sizes. Go back a minute. Go back up to where you were here.
Which one?
I want you to get to the Juget. There you go. See the Ike and Nixon button there?
Yeah.
Those are called Jugets. Juga. Well, Jugets, however you spell it. Anyway, when you can get a Juget button, that's much more valuable than just a slogan button.
So the one with the cutout pictures.
Yeah, well, what did that sell for? That should have sold for a nice price, actually, because that's a pretty good size.
That one sold for $30.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
So what about these here next to it? There's one in Greek and there's one in Spanish.
Well, but they shouldn't have brought anywhere near that kind of money.
Well, it looks like they both sold for $32.99.
Boy, oh boy, most of their money are soon parted.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, here's a trivia question for you.
Okay.
In the third Roosevelt election with Wilkie, there was a favorite slogan button that does very well in the market. You know what the slogan was on the button?
For Roosevelt?
For the third Roosevelt election, yes, against Wilkie.
I don't know.
No man is good 3 times. Is what it said. Enough of that.
And that was a Wilkie button?
That was a Wilkie button.
Yeah.
Well, now, come on. Who would know this stuff but me, Greg? But hey.
I don't know. You're always the guy that I turn to. It's like, well, who would know this? Harry would know this.
Hey, by the way, though, let's go to the other buttons that came in with this request, too, because these are fun buttons.
Here we go.
Here are our local buttons. A state senator, state governor, and on the piece on the right is called a tab. And this is one of those things where, the national elections do very well, although I get in a big argument with the political collectors all the time when I keep saying nobody collects a loser. So, it's better to wait for the election's over to find out who wins to buy this stuff than it is to speculate. Because there are no Dukakis collectors out there, trust me.
Right.
Anyway, here's some local history stuff, and this is of value only in the state where it comes from. Now, it's interesting about these. These are obviously Republican candidates and I know they're from Indiana, and they won. They won. Capehart was a senator for several terms, and Hadley was the governor. And so, but suppose you came across this polka dot blue tie pennant, or tab, polka dot blue tie tab, and you wouldn't have any idea who it was. It turns out it's a tab for Governor Hartley. He wore polka dot blue. He wore white polka dot blue ties. I found a picture of him.
Okay. So that's very
what you're looking at is a buck to a couple bucks a piece at most.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. Well, okay, let's get that community sign back up here again, because come on, gang, we need some questions and object here, and here you have. It's a little big here. I can't read it, but we won't care about that. There you are. That's much better. Yeah, we want you to send your questions about anything you'd like us to talk about, and especially about objects to community at WorthPoint.com, so we have some things to talk about in future shows. Meanwhile, as we come to the end of the show, I'll end it the way I always do by asking Craig, what's new at WorthPoint?
What's new at WorthPoint? Well, we are on the tail end of the sweepstakes entries. So if you want to enter our second sweepstakes for a trip to Mexico, with Will Seipel, our founder and CEO, to go antiquing there. Go to the WorthPoint Facebook page, and you'll see the link to sign up there. We're still doing our beta testing on the digital recognition of the marks. So if you are a subscriber to the Maps product, the Maps is marks, antiques, patterns, and symbols. You can upload your maker's marks and see if we can digitally match that image to our file. We're still, doing the beta testing, so we're trying to hammer out all the kinks. And that's pretty much where we are right now. We're constantly adding to the Worthopedia, and I think we're at 305 million pieces of sales data.
Well, the thing about the Worthopedia that's so important, these are all the objects that sold through, not asking prices.
Yes. Right. So as we were looking at these I Like Ike buttons here,
they all sold through, right? Those were the sell-through prices
that they sold for. So you'll be able to compare the prices between several items over the course of several years. So our data goes back to 2006, 2007. So that's almost a 10-year history of these items. So you can get a trend of prices and see if they're going up or going down.
Well, now we're gonna move these chats, Greg, from Tuesday night at 9 to Wednesday night at 9, starting in September. You're taking some courses, and I've got some things I need to do as well, and hopefully we'll be able to stay at that time through the fall and the winter months. But meanwhile, we want to thank everybody that tunes in and checks these out. And again, hopefully we'll hear from you in the not too distant future. You have a great night.
I will. You too, Harry. And goodbye to everybody watching. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.